Terry, you're not from this area originally. Why do you feel so passionately about it?
I suppose I, like people would often ask me that question. They'll say, well, what part of Sailortown are you from? Particularly some of the ones who kind of go, who does she think she is like? But I said to them, I'm a culture, and basically culture is a term of abuse here. In an Irish term of abuse, it means someone from the country who doesn't have a lot of culture. I would prefer to say it means that we're very cultured. We have a much deeper understanding of our culture and our heritage than people from the city. Don't start me on that one. But anyway, I think really I come from a small town in County Fermanagh, and I grew up in a small town where, did you ever hear of like Valley of Squinting Windows, where everybody was watching you all the time, every move you made, particularly when you were a teenager. Every move you made was reported back to your mum and dad, and you were constantly in trouble. You know, it was like the neighbours were all watching you all the time, and I hated every minute of it. I couldn't wait to get out. But anyway, as you get older and you have family of your own, you begin to realise the value of that. I have 4 children, so I basically did a variety of different things, and then went back to Queen's and did my degree. I did a degree in scholastic philosophy, which kind of gave me a good understanding of really how the system works on quite a deep level, like a conceptual level. But I got then very much into community work, and began to work with like ex-prisoners at the Falls and Shankill and that. I was their office manager, and we had all kinds of we took loyalist people down to Dublin for a tour. It's basically about confronting perceptions, you know. So then I did a project then which was to do with I always had a big focus on women's issues, being a mother and being a woman basically. But then I kind of I got a bit grant in from the council, because I have a friend who's originally from Sailortown and also worked in Gallagher's tobacco factory from when she was 16, and she's a fantastic storyteller, and she used to tell us all these stories about growing up very, very poor and about her working conditions. And I used to say to her, somebody needs to be recording that and writing it down. She used to say to me, well, why don't you do it? So I then got a grant, and a friend of mine was running a multimedia company. I got a grant from the council, or from the lottery people, and I put together 3 30-minute documentaries. One was on the women who worked in Gallagher's tobacco factory. One was on the women who, the Poor Clares, which was an enclosed order of nuns on the Cliftonville Road, which meant an awful lot to the people who were living in that area all through the Troubles, because they felt it was a place of sanctuary, a place of safety. And the bishop again was closing their community down and moving them all out because they've got elderly. The third group then was the Sailortown group. So I came down here, basically got very friendly with the Sailortown people, excuse me, and then the women started taking me into the dockers and giving me vodka and stuff, and we got friendly. And then Shawnee Baker, who was the main volunteer, who was really passionate about the area and really, really resented the fact that the church had been closed. He was like just a one-man carrier of everything that was, good and bad about Sailortown. So we got friendly, and then I began to realise that the group down here, with the best will in the world for protesting and campaigning and everything, they had all left school at the age of maybe 14 or 15. They went to work, like I said earlier. Women went to the mills or the factories or the service industry. So they didn't have those skills. You find very much whenever you are working, trying to get funding in for things, you need those skills. You need to understand how the funding system works. You need to understand how the political system works. You need to be able to bring in people of influence who can have some impact on what you're doing. So I started off with getting them small grants in for activities. Say we had them all doing set dancing and sewing classes, and we had the kids doing hip hop. But then we started to look at the church, and the church again was in an awful state. And I mean, Shawnee was very, very upset about it. They said, because look at it, the pigeons in, the holes in the roof, and it meant so much to them. So I said, well, sure, we'll try and get a wee bit of money. So we managed to get a £10,000 grant from, who was it at that stage? From the lottery. And then we managed, that was just to get reports done. And then we managed to get another bit of money for repairs. I think it was about £9,000. And we just kind of worked our way from there. But I've learned a lot since coming down here. So my kind of passion would be people, community, those kind of things that bind people together. And actually the disrespect that people are held in. These are people who have worked all their lives, and these are people who need to be respected. And I think one thing that I would kind of get quite angry about is that in terms of regeneration, people come down, and again, like I said earlier, the developers just see the empty spaces. the people who are into tourism and heritage just see the stories. They all love the stories. They love those stories which are, you know, some very sad. I mean, the people down here didn't have an easy life. You know, it wasn't a nice place to live. There are those romantic ideas about, you know, this idea about community, but it's about bettering people's conditions. So the feisty spirit of the people in Sailortown, that they managed to hold on to the church just against the odds. So it's really, it's hard to describe it, but really it's about how people can fight back maybe against the system, how they can do things for themselves. The new community, the new kids that are down there now, they're a bit wild, but they're fantastic. They're so creative and so imaginative, and they run the streets. So those are the type of people that should be celebrated. Now, what I said there a minute ago about the culture, tourism, heritage, what tends to happen is that regeneration looks at that, but what they want are the stories to be reflected in a nice museum setting, or in a nice kind of, maybe in this kind of walk along where people can look at a statue, or they can look at an information board and can say, oh, look at those poor people and what lives they led. This is not about the people taking other people's stories. It's about people holding on to their own stories and reflecting them in their own way. So that's really what it's about for me. It's about people basically being in charge of their own heritage, their own history, and not handing it across to anybody else, and reflecting the reality of it, not just the kind of a saccharine kind of version of it.